Have you been thinking about hiring a salesperson or a business development person for your agency, but you're not really sure what you should be looking for? Or maybe you're like a lot of other agency owners that I've talked to where you've tried hiring somebody in the past, and you have put somebody in, but after 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you really felt like it's just not working out. The fact is that there are actually 4 different types of business development roles that you could potentially have in your agency. Most businesses or most agencies have at least 2. In some instances, they might have the 3 or 4. Okay, and that's what we're going to map out today, and just sort of explain that or show that there are those different types of roles. Means that they're doing different types of things. Okay, the problem I see is that quite often agency owners or business owners look to and just have. They think that one type of salesperson is going to do everything, and that's just not the case. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through today. If you don't know me, my name is Joel Norton. I'm an ex-agency CEO. I used to run an 8-figure MarTech agency, and today I help ambitious agency owners who are looking to grow a more profitable business that runs and grows independently of them. Ultimately, how do we win better clients, increase profit, and also free their time? Okay. So today we're going to go through exactly what those 4 different roles are and talk a little bit more around the skills and what you're looking for as far as business development. All right. Before we jump into that, I just want to share a little bit about, or share a story, which was with somebody I was working with last year, and they were looking to bring on a salesperson so that they could focus more on the delivery and also developing their product. Now, at the time, they thought they'd struck gold. They'd found or were speaking to somebody that was already working in another agency, and it was very similar to what they sort of did. So they felt like this person's going to come in and hit the ground running, and my sales is just going to go whoosh like that. Okay. Now, the reality is that didn't happen, and that's because they were just very different. What the skills and capabilities of the salesperson that he brought in was very different to actually what he needed. And I'm just going to, let's switch screens and I'll just explain why that is. Okay, so this is something that I help embed with agencies, which is the multi-channel lead machine, okay? And there's 7 elements to this. So ultimately, over time, we want to have these 7 elements. Today, I'm just going to focus on 2 specific parts of that, okay? So in the first instance, I'm going to start here on the right, and we'll do this in blue. So let's call this lead generation, okay? And so lead generation could be anything like, so that's ads, which might be, it could be paid search, or paid social, okay? And it could be also SEO. So anything where we're generating some leads and there's leads coming in. All right. On the other side is actually outbound. Now, the best agencies that are getting a consistent flow of leads every month are generally doing both of these things plus the other things in the rest of the triangle that we're not going through, okay? So you want to have more than one source of leads. But let's just talk about outbound briefly. So as far as outbound, that could be calls, it could be emails, and it could also be social, okay? Whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, just depending on who your audience, what's most appropriate for your audience, okay? Now, in that example I was just telling you about a second ago, the agency that this business development person was working at was doing a lot of lead generation, okay? So every week, this BD person had leads that he could then follow up. So there were leads coming in. So basically all he was doing was qualifying and then looking to convert them, okay? Now, in the scenario with this, where the agency that he was moving to, with the agency that I was working with, he actually wanted him to do much more around outbound, which was around sourcing the leads, identifying them, doing the initial outreach, qualifying them, and then bringing it in to the owner to then try and close, okay? Now, obviously, they're very, very different types of skills, okay? And so as a result, within 3 months, he realized that this is just not working out. So that's just a little bit of context, okay? This is really important. And I'm going to, let's go through now and just talk and look at what are those 4 different agency business development roles. So in the example where we've got inbound leads coming in, okay, I'll just make sure the colors are right. So here we've got inbound, Okay, so that's from the inbound leads. Okay. In the other box here, we've got outbound leads. And let's use a different color. And then here, what we've got here, these are the closers. And then these ones over here are the farmers. Okay, so let's start on the far right. So these ones, this is account managers. Okay, now most people, historically, I would have looked at those as really around customer service or account management and just keeping the clients happy. But ultimately, they're still salespeople. This is about growing lifetime customer value. Okay, that's their focus. They are salespeople to a degree. Okay. The next one here, if we're going back, this one is the BDM. So it's Business Development Manager. Okay, so ultimately they're the ones that should be doing the proposals and actually closing the opportunities. And that's where historically, really, owners and founders sort of play in that space. They're the ones who are responsible for closing, all right? Now, on the left, we've now got these, we've either got outbound lead, they're generating outbound leads, or they're managing inbound leads, okay? Now, these ones are effectively the BDR, which is Business Development Representative, okay? So they're a lower cost, entry-level sales position, whereas the BDM has got much more experience in doing much of the closing, all right? Now, as I go through this, is it possible to have one person doing that? Yes, it is. And as I said, like a lot of founders or owners have done that. They're doing the networking, they're doing the outreach, they're connecting with people, and they're closing. Is it possible to do that? Absolutely it is. Is it the best way to do it moving forward? No. Ultimately, what you do is, because as we go through, there's actually specialist skills around this. And like you would know within the agency and the people is, a specialist is always going to be much more efficient and therefore time effective and cost effective than having somebody that's a generalist, okay? So if you think about your time in sales doing things, if you're trying to do outreach and connecting with people and doing that sort of stuff, that takes a lot of energy, and then you've got less time to spend on doing proposals and following up and closing it and all the rest of it. So in an ideal world, what we want to build towards is to have these different types of roles. Okay, let's just talk about this in a little bit more detail. So just make sure with my colors. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to talk about BDRs in more about the outbound sense. Okay, so make sure that I'm using orange. Okay, business development representative. The problem that they're trying to solve is lack of leads. Okay, and so their focus basically is around generating qualified leads. All right, and so their responsibility in this sense is researching, doing list generation. It's then actually doing the outreach, email, social, possibly calls. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. And then, not sure what happened there. And then they should ideally also be doing the lead qualification. So when they have generated the appointment, they're doing the initial lead qualification to make sure that they are a fit before it goes to the BD person, okay? And so how we measure them is really around how much outreach are they doing, whether that's emails, calls, social, whatever, but what's the volume and quantity they're doing here? How many discovering calls are they doing every week? And ultimately, what the qualified leads are, all right? Now, let's shift over to the right where we're talking about the business development manager, okay? So we're going to use blue here. So these guys, the problem here is really around they're responsible for proposals and conversions. And ultimately, the focus is sales, yeah? And so their responsibilities are then around, so they've received a qualified lead, then they need to qualify the opportunity, okay? So it's opportunity qualification, then they're doing the proposals, and ultimately they're doing the close. And then, so what we measure them on is really around the clients that they've actually won. I'd also be looking at average customer value. We want to be focused on that. So a sale is not just a sale, that we're actually looking at the average customer value associated with those. Sales velocity is also really important. If you're not sure about that, in really simple terms, sales velocity is a way to put a dollar number on how fast you can close sales, okay? I've got an article, which I'll link to in the description below, which shares a little bit more around sales velocity and how the time to close has a massive impact in revenue and profitability in your agency, okay? Another one I'd be looking at also is customer retention. Most people just look at the initial sale, but if they're closing people who then churn 3 months later or 6 months later, they're not a good fit, okay? We want to make sure that we're getting people in, that we're getting good customer value, but also they're staying with us for a long period of time. So if we look at the different types of roles, as far as the business development, we've got the BDM, the business development manager, and we've got the BDRs, okay? Now let's break it down a little bit further and just talk about it in terms of the process. And I'm going to work back to front again, okay? And that way I can also make sure that we're using the right colors. So let's start here. So this is blue, so this is really the BDM, okay? So in the scenario where we're getting inbound leads coming in, then they could be doing lead qualification. The next thing they're doing is they're doing opportunity qualification. Okay, now what's the difference? Lead qualification is making sure that they've got budget. Authority means they're a decision maker. There's an actual need. They need what we do. And timing, that they're ready to buy now, okay? As a general rule of thumb, I would expect that probably 50% of the leads, possibly less, are going to be qualified, okay? If you're taking 100% and going through into the sales process, you're just going to be burning time and energy doing proposals and then wondering why. That's one problem, wasting a lot of time on doing proposals for people that are not going to close. And the second thing is you're going to have this big pipeline that's bloated and people aren't closing. And then you're making decisions based on the pipeline. So what we want is a higher conversion rate. So I'd much prefer to qualify hard and sell easy. So at the very least, you should be half of the people. Qualification is not about getting them through to the next stage. Qualification is actually about getting rid of the people that aren't ready to buy now. Now, they might be a great prospect, but they're just not ready to buy it yet, okay? They might be in consideration mode. And if that is the case, then we treat them differently. We're not going to spend a lot of time and energy in doing a proposal thinking they're going to close in the next period of time. So that's the difference. We want to qualify them, make sure they've got budget, they're a decision maker, they've got a need, and they're ready to make a decision soon, okay? Once we've done that as a separate, discrete process, then there's the opportunity qualification. And opportunity qualification is really around understanding, identifying how they determine value, okay? And we also want to quantify it. We want to put some numbers against that in terms of where they are now and where they're trying to get to, okay? Then as a result of that, we've then got the proposal. And the next thing is we want to close. And it's either a win or it's a no, okay? So where we've got, in the scenario where we've got inbound leads coming in, a BDM, one person, could manage all of that process, okay? Now, in the scenario where we don't have inbound leads coming in, now we're talking about doing outbound, okay? So in that scenario where we've got the BDR, so I'm going to do this in the orange. okay? Business development representative. So the first thing is they're going to be doing research. So we've defined, we've actually told them this is our ideal customer profile or our perfect future customer, and we're really clear on what the demographics, what they look like from a company point of view, but also from an individual point of view. So we're very clear on the personas and our ideal customer profile. So they're doing the research and developing the list, okay? That's the first bit. Then they're actually going to, so it's research and, if you like, build the list. Then the next thing they're going to do is then the outbound. And as I said earlier, that could be through calls. It could be through emails. And it could be social. So it could be those things individually, or ideally, it's all three things together. So it's multi-channel, okay? And so they're generating interest. And in this scenario where we do have a separate person and there's a BDR, then they would then do also the lead qualification process, okay, in that scenario. So they're then qualifying them. At the very least, they're doing 1 and 2. And ideally, they would also qualify it so that the BDM doesn't get involved until this point here, where they've got a qualified lead, and all they're then doing is then looking at qualifying it as an opportunity, okay? So that just gives you a sense. And then obviously when I talked earlier, let's get my colors right, the account managers, the account managers happen off the screen, somewhere over here. That's happening post-sale, all right? So as I said earlier, could you have one person do all of that? Yes, you could, but it's going to be slower and less effective. Am I telling you to hire 2 people straight out of the gate? No. But this is just more so that you're super clear. Now, the great thing is that today, you could potentially, let's use a different color. You could potentially, this is what I do with some of my clients, is that we get a VA, a virtual assistant, to be doing this piece here to help them with that piece. And then the founder comes in to then do this stage. So that's a stepping stone, okay? So a VA to do that, effectively that business development role, and doing the research, building lists, doing the outreach and all the rest of it. And then the founder then takes them up, and so they are doing the lead qualification, opportunity qualification, all the rest of it. Once they get into a rhythm, and they've got a process sorted out, then they can ultimately then hire themselves out and hire a BDM to replace them in that scenario, okay? But anyway, I hope that helps as far as just understanding a little bit more around the different types of sales roles or business development roles that you might find in an agency, and importantly, where you might apply them in those different scenarios, because it does matter if you're getting inbound leads or if you need the salesperson to actually generate their own leads, okay? I hope that helps. I've got another video, if you're interested in learning more about this, I've got another video where it actually walks through the sales process in a little bit more detail and just clarifying the different, so more about the structure of the sales process and the methodology, but also the different types of scripts or elements that you would use at each different stage, because it does, I've got a separate process, for argument's sake, for a digital marketing agency to if it might be a creative agency. So the process and the structure is a little bit different. So if you're interested in that, check out my other video. Otherwise, I hope that helps. And here's your next win. I'll see you next time. Cheers.